So yeah, like Pete, that Peter, that statement at the end, like deliver value when the money comes. Like to me, that is just the biggest principle of any of this kind of stuff. And it really, because when the innovation ecosystem first happened, obviously heavily government funded, the ideas boom, $1.1 billion, states followed suit. And there's this massive explosion. And I think all of us came around 5 years. All of us felt like everybody else has been doing it for a long time, and we'd all been like 6 months old, you know. And but yeah, I'd be interested in your guys' thoughts on just as far as the conversation we just had, as well as like how we, where that value comes from. And Christy, you're one of the prime examples of an established value delivering economic development organization, then moving into the co-working space or into the innovation space, whereas a lot of the other ones have been doing innovation and then moving more into the economic development narrative.
And
I
I'm
think
so
yours.
interested to hear. Sorry, I'm so interested to hear your experience, Paul. You are incredibly authentic and brave in the words that you're sharing, because sometimes it takes somebody to actually speak to their lived experience to really open it up for everyone else, permission for them to share. So I'm cheering you on, and I think your lived experience is absolutely invaluable to others. On that, yes, we are starting at the opposite end, I guess, to some extent, because while we have always had innovation in regional communities, we might not have always framed it in that way, which is what I was sort of getting to before. So I think what we would really love to see is a pathway, and I've talked with Chad about this and he's really helped us a lot. When we do come across someone who's doing something really innovative, they're more than likely they're solving a problem or something that they're facing. It could even be them trying to create a side income to supplement their on-farm income, or whatever it might be that they're doing. What's our pathway to support them? Because we are in every sense a traditional economic development business support type group. When something like that new comes on our radar, that might not necessarily be part of the network that we have always traditionally worked with. So this is where this kind of ecosystem that Chad is really, it's supporting and that you're all part of as well. It is so wonderful for us to be able to tap into that, because it really broadens out the options that we have to offer then, that we can pass on. We had an example of, someone in the inland who was really creative, doing this incredible work in isolation. We came across them quite by accident on a completely different topic, and recognised that what they were putting together was pretty special. It wasn't until making the connection between them and Chad that we really unlocked the full potential of what they were doing, and they're on their journey now. I think having that pathway for innovation sometimes is really of great value to us in regional communities where it might not be practical to have a physical hub in every space. We've got 14 towns across a really large geographical area. In practical sense, resourcing for those physical hubs just wouldn't be possible. Yet resourcing for people to support the pathway and to really make it I guess broadly accepted of that there is support there for people who have an idea and directions that they can go in. I loved what you said about that, Katie, around funding, not for buildings, funding for people, funding to help these kind of things happen, to help keep making these connections, which can sometimes be not as appealing as, I guess, a fixed building, that you have something tangible that you can see in front of you. This is where the money went. I would love to see more investment in people, not just in organisations like ours, but people in general, because those key drivers are they're in every ecosystem, they're in every sector, they're in every community.
Very much so.
If we really get behind them, we'll see endless amounts of innovation and entrepreneurship flow.
And I think the key there for funding, just to jump in, is like what Peter was really touching on, which is what's your purpose and what's your outcome. And that's what I've been trying to get my hubs and my champions to really switch their mindset to. Like, what you're doing on a local level, and it's super important. But actually, you're going for funding, and it might not be through government, it might be through corporates or whoever you want to support you. Tell them what you're going to do for them. Figure out what it is that you're bringing value to, and then just focus on that and make it really simple. I love how simple you're able to articulate that, Peter, and I think that that's a real talent and a real skill that we need to help build. I see that as part of the Mesh Points network is really getting people together and thrashing out where people are at, really having an understanding of where they're at in terms of maturity. We're doing some mapping as well, like you were saying, Richard, around that right now. And then going, okay, well, you're not quite there. You don't quite get what we're saying. You need to get to this level. And then having examples like the Canberra Innovation Network and also like Mallee Rising and others that you guys have kind of blazed the way, especially from a West Australian perspective, that we can tap into and go, have a look at this example and have a look at how they're articulating and have a look at their supporters. And let's kind of try and, you know, not think this up from scratch. Let's try not to be too innovative in our approach to innovation.
Yeah, I think that's like a really cool point, Katie, and it's something like Chad and I and a few of the others have been really talking about. You know, what do we do with this group of people, this network of people, and what we've created here? Like it's been an opportunistic event, but it was never done in that vein, because as you know, we've been trying to bring everyone together that are leaders for such a long time. And this provided an opportunity to do that. And now it's like, okay, well, what is it that we do next? And what does that look like? And what do people want and need as leaders of our innovation ecosystem? So like really interesting that you talk about, you know, the opportunity to connect with others and learn from them about where you're at, and you're doing that within your own networks. But sort of maybe just a question out to all of you. And sorry, I'm just like,
Can I maybe take it and start? Because this is such a deja vu for me. In 2008, when the Czech Republic entered the European Union in about 2004, and there was lots of money that came to the regional economic development area. In fact, too much money, and it created a problem for people who were interested in regional innovation systems. And there was such a big money grab that we, as people on this call, we needed to create a group that sort of is not compromised with the money. So we created a Regional Innovation Forum, and I was the person inviting everyone. And I said, this forum will never be funded from European Union, so come only and join us, because it was such a odd situation. At that point, nobody would be meeting if they would not be able to kind of somehow submit the costs to the European Union, and it was so anti my values that we had to create a group of people that would be attracted to those values. And we thought about, how do we build from bottom up modern economic development in this country. And we met every year. Even when I used to live back in New Zealand, I would fly back, and for one day we would have like this closed summit in which we would share absolutely openly everything we do, including the tactics around how we work with politicians, what do we need to do to be able to kind of create the hub the way we did it. And until today, last week I was on a call with people who were there. So it's connected through trust and through human relationships. And I'm sourcing information from that group until today. And I think it's such an opportunity for Australia, such a huge country. When I came here, I couldn't even see how it could be done. And then in the last week of March, it was done, and it was done by your group, Chad and I. And so I think it's something precious that we should keep together.
Yeah, the value proposition, just to go back a little bit there on what most people are saying there, is so important. And I think if you can get a better understanding of that, then you can identify the key stakeholders that perhaps are going to be in a way the ones that are going to derive most value from that. And then I think collaboration happens almost intuitively. People come to the table because they can see that, there's a benefit there for them. And I think it's really important with all stakeholder engagement is to actually identify what part of what you're trying to do is actually going to meet their needs. So it might be, that you're doing something that's going to meet the needs of 3 or 4 key stakeholders, but each one of them needs a different pitch in a way in order to, make sure that you are delivering the value to them specifically. So there might be a different element of that project, for example, that, satisfies the needs of 3 different stakeholders that have very different needs. So I think that's really important. And then it does tend to happen a little bit more intuitively. And for us, identifying capacity, even if it's nascent in the ecosystem, and then within service providers, and then trying to perhaps provide some support and uplift to them so that they can take on that role, longer term in the ecosystem as well. So we're trying to identify gaps and weaknesses, if you like, to see where we can put our most of our time, so that we're not replicating, we're not duplicating, but we're also, identifying areas, support organisations that might be able to fill some of those gaps, and trying to provide support to them, so that all boats rise in a rising tide, as they say.
Yeah, that redundancy of services, the duplication, because quite often is that term people use, the ecosystem versus the ecosystem, and quite often it is this really weird leadership style that's needed of, you got to be charismatic, you got to be a visionary, you got to be promotional, you got to get the word out there, and you have to be humble as heck and disappear. How do we, and I like the metaphor of the backbone, which I think I've shared with a few of you, where like you only know it's there when something's wrong, when it's broken, when it's not supporting, but when it's functioning, nobody even talks about it. And so what does that look like, and how do we make sure we have backup for our backbones? So it's not just dependent on us as personalities, but like you say, how do we raise the tide? So interested in thoughts. It's great conversation.
I think at the end of the day, Richard, we're all pushing in the same direction. Whether it's a government department or a community not-for-profit like us, or individuals themselves might be in business or industry. I think we all ultimately want to see positive outcomes. In our case, economic growth. Good things happen to contribute to the livability of everyone in our community. So it's just about. So totally agree with Peter. It's about relationships. And once there's trust and familiarity in those relationships, I think that really does help to help build those blocks that we really need for progress.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to build that trust, one of the things that you can do is to have those conversations and really dig into, what people, are looking for as far as value goes, and understanding that, and it's sort of, I guess, coming to it with very open arms. What's going to work for you? How's this going to work? What does it look like? What does success look like for you? And yes, ultimately, I think we all have, the same goals, but between different organisations, I think there's different objectives, perhaps, that it's important to try and understand those objectives.
One of the things I want to test here, and it's, I guess, one of the reasons why we started this whole thing in the first place, and the Slack channel, which I forgot to plug during the thing, which I'll send out in the email, is how do we establish what we do as a profession? I do a lot of work with the Kauffman Foundation over in the US, and that's a lot of the work that they do. And look, globally, we're all kind of making it up. How do we create a bit of a standards of practice? I love Peter, I love the work that you've done in the past. I want to talk to you about that more. But how do we help equip, from Mesh Points to Mallee Rising to, there's probably about 20 to 50 of these entities across Australia in some form. And so I'd be interested in your thoughts on creating a bit of this standards of practice, creating a, and we're talking about some different structures around it. It's what you're going to see with phase 2 of the Slack channel. How do we create us as a body of professionals so we all don't have to recreate the wheel, provide that guidance on how to apply for funding, and how do we position ourselves to the diverse stakeholders? Even the core, like position descriptions for a community manager for an innovation hub, like really basic stuff. It'd be interesting your thoughts on the need for that at a national level with global connectivity, and how we do our craft better.
Well, if I could just add, I think it'd be great to have that supportive ecosystem, because now I'm seeing smaller townships in Swan Hill, people going and creating hubs. And they're being inspired by other people, but again, they're probably going to make the same mistakes we did, choose the wrong legal structures, and probably love some coaching around some revenue streams which work in other regions, which will help them become sustainable businesses. So I just think the more we can share knowledge around opportunities, particularly to become more sustainable. I mean, I think part of my biggest problem or challenge has been the constant hunt to keep the doors open makes my thinking, the way I operate, different to the way I'd like to be. And some of you are probably in a different position. So I know that if the day I arrive at where I know my rent is paid for the next few months and I might actually start paying myself a salary, then I know that the way I approach somebody, the language is totally different. And I'm not looking at it to get some dollars to put some food on the table or keep the lights on. It becomes about how can I genuinely create more value. So I think that's a huge step for anyone in their first few years. If you can reduce the time of that anxiety of how do you go from being hand to mouth to having that confidence that your business is quite sustainable. All of a sudden when a school, I've just had somebody contact me today who wants some help to start a social enterprise. Now, I know that I don't want to charge them money. I know I need the money, but I don't want to charge somebody starting out money to help them. You want to get to that point where you're not worried about your bank balance anymore. You can actually focus on what, as I think Peter or Richard said, your purpose. So I think that's where the support of such a group like this could be. How do you turn on some revenue streams which the communities need, which individually they're not game changers, but several revenue streams just takes that sting out of your operations. All of a sudden you can start jumping in a few more webinars or going to schools or doing some things in schools and not thinking about charging them for things. So
simply having space in your head to think up the ideas that take you to the next level, because the simple Maslow hierarchy of needs, you're stressed about your baseline stuff. Where's your inspiration and your creativity? And this, I'm nodding and umming it so much because this defines the Western Australian ecosystem. You take the Pilbara, where all of the mines are, out of the ecosystem, the other 8 regions in Western Australia are in exactly that position. And Meshpoints works tirelessly to advocate for that to government, to say, you guys need to understand exactly what you're saying, Paul. It's so important. And what Meshpoints does is actually take, oh, you needed a community development. Oh, well, we've already done that for this hub in the Pilbara. They paid for it. Here, have it for free. So it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul, but we're like, well, we're cool with it because that's already funded. So it's kind of the same thing. And Chad and Di, we've talked about this for years now, it feels like, but I feel like it's coming together now. This is the time. Just what is the pitch? Who's the pitch to?
And I think too, Katie, on that, a lot of we want to participate at the same table as our state and federal government and local government, all levels of government, but we're not there on an even playing field financially. We are hand to mouth. I think our profit and loss statement that we all live and breathe, it is not profit, it is freedom. It is the ability for us to keep serving. That's what we're here for. So I'm so passionate about this. I've talked to Chad about this as well. It really is on our heart. Our whole organisation are we are very devoted to our sustainability going forward so that we can continue to serve over the long term. That's really at the end of the day. And I think there's a lot of work to do in the space, but we are so keen to learn with others. And yeah, we're all ears for this conversation, that's for sure, because that's what we're here for. We're here to take care of our people. And we're in the same business environment as businesses. So I think we've got that innate understanding of what businesses are going through. We hear them, we're right there beside them, and it gives us that really unique perspective at the table then when we are having more strategic conversations about future growth and direction. So we've got an amazing, our position is there is so much benefit in being where we are, but there are some real challenges around us sustaining that position.
Thanks for that, Christy. I might just wrap this up just in the interest of time. I know a few of us have a few other things to go on, but I don't want obviously the conversation to stop here. We want more of these, just to be able to connect and support each other. Yeah, I mean, the wisdom and the insights that you guys have on the ground, the support that you give to entrepreneurs in your regions, the depth of knowledge to be able to share, and also your willingness to share with all the other people that have stuck around on the panel or in the attendees list. I can't thank you guys enough. Really appreciate your work. Thanks heaps.
Thank you for having us.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for bringing us all together. We are, you know, so grateful that there are leaders in this space like yourself and Di who are pulling these events together, because there's so much for us to learn through this experience from others. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christy.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great to hear from
Thank
everybody.
you, and I'm
Lovely
keen
to
to
meet you.
connect with all of you.
All right, awesome. I'll send some emails out after.
That'd
Thanks,
be
guys.
great.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.
Bye.
Thanks, Di. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.